Jim's role had evolved from a soldier haunted by his past to a leader and visionary guiding the future of interstellar relations. His legacy was not just in the missions he led or the battles he fought, but in the spirit of exploration and mutual respect he helped foster. The stories of his bravery and compassion became legendary, inspiring generations to come. The universe, with all its mysteries and challenges, was no longer an intimidating void, but an open frontier filled with opportunities for growth and discovery. Jim's story was a testament to the power of choice, the impact of empathy, and the importance of forging connections with those who were once considered strangers. As he reflected on his journey, Jim understood that the true measure of success was not in the accolades or achievements, but in the lasting impact he had made. The relationships he had built, the peace he had helped secure, and the future he had shaped were his greatest accomplishments. With a final glance at the stars, Jim embraced the knowledge that the adventure was far from over. The universe was a vast and wondrous place, and the path ahead was filled with infinite possibilities. His journey was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope, and that the quest for understanding and unity would continue to drive the exploration of the cosmos. And so, with the aurora sailing gracefully through the stars, Jim's story became a beacon of inspiration, lighting the way for all those who dared to dream of a future where cooperation and curiosity knew no bounds. The legacy of his decision, his courage, and his unyielding belief in the power of unity would continue to shine brightly, guiding future generations as they ventured into the infinite expanse of space, forever inspired by the promise of what could be achieved when worlds came together. The mysterious transformation. John's alarm pierced through the fog of sleep, dragging him reluctantly from his dreams. Groaning, he fumbled for his phone on the nightstand. It was 6:30 a.m., another mundane Monday in Seattle. As he shuffled to the bathroom, his eyes were half closed, guided by muscle memory through his morning routine. It wasn't until he reached for his toothbrush that he noticed something strange. Instead of the usual toothbrush holder, there was a vibrant fern in its place, its delicate fronds swaying slightly in the air conditioning. "What the hell?" John muttered, rubbing his eyes. He stared at the plant, confusion morphing into alarm. John stumbled out of the bathroom and made his way to his roommate Mike's door. It was ajar. "Mike, did you bring home plants last night?" He called, but the words died in his throat. The room was empty. Mike's bed was rumpled, and right in the center was a stout cactus. His heart pounded. This had to be a dream or some bizarre hallucination from too many late-night coding sessions and energy drinks. He pinched himself hard. The pain was real. Panic rose as he rushed to the window and yanked open the curtains. The street below was chaotic. People were screaming and pointing at plants everywhere. Trees, shrubs, and flowers had sprouted where men should be. "This can't be happening," John thought, his fingers digging into the windowsill. A scream from the apartment next door snapped him into action. He threw on clothes, tripping as he shoved his feet into sneakers. Bursting into the hallway, he narrowly avoided Mrs. Patel, his elderly neighbor. "John," she cried, grabbing his arm. "My Harold, he's gone. There's just this fern where he should be. I don't know what's happening." John stammered, "We need to get outside and figure out what's going on." They made their way down the stairs, joining the growing crowd of panicked residents. The lobby was a mess of overturned furniture and discarded belongings. A young woman sobbed hysterically, clutching a potted orchid to her chest. John pushed through the front doors into the cool morning air, which hit him like a slap. The street was a scene of pandemonium. Cars were abandoned, their doors flung open. A fire hydrant had burst, adding to the surreal atmosphere. A crackling voice came from a nearby police cruiser's radio. "Hello, is anyone there? This is dispatch. We're getting reports of men turning into plants. I know it sounds crazy, but—" The transmission cut off abruptly. John's mind raced. People don't just turn into plants. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Every male human and animal alike had been transformed. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. John looked up, his jaw dropping as an enormous ship materialized above the city skyline. Its sleek, silvery surface gleamed in the morning sun, defying any earthly aircraft design he'd ever seen. The ship descended, hovering over a nearby park. A hatch opened in its underside, and a ramp extended to the ground. John found himself moving toward it, drawn by a mix of terror and curiosity. A group of figures emerged from the ship. As they drew closer, John realized they were all female, strikingly beautiful women with skin in various shades of pale lavender to deep purple. Their eyes were large and luminous, their movements graceful despite the tense situation. One of them, clearly the leader, stepped forward. She wore a form-fitting silver uniform adorned with intricate insignia. Her hair was a shocking electric blue, falling in waves past her shoulders. "Greetings, humans of Earth," she said, her voice carrying the alien arrival. John and Mrs. Patel joined the growing crowd of panicked residents in the lobby. Overturned furniture and discarded belongings created a chaotic scene. A young woman sobbed hysterically, clutching a potted orchid to her chest. John pushed through the front doors, and the cool morning air hit him like a slap. The street was a scene of pandemonium. Abandoned cars stood with doors flung open. A fire hydrant had burst, spraying water into the air. The surreal atmosphere was punctuated by a crackling voice from a nearby police cruiser's radio. "This is dispatch. We're getting reports of men turning into plants. I know it sounds crazy, but—" The transmission cut off abruptly. John's mind raced. People don't just turn into plants. And yet the evidence was undeniable. Every male human and animal had been transformed. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. John looked up, his jaw dropping as an enormous ship materialized above the city skyline. The ship was sleek and silvery, reflecting the morning sun, and it defied any earthly aircraft design John had ever seen. It descended, hovering over a nearby park. A hatch opened in its underside, and a ramp extended to the ground. John felt a mix of terror and curiosity pulling him towards it. A group of figures emerged from the ship. As they drew closer, John realized they were all female, strikingly beautiful women with skin in various shades of pale lavender to deep purple. Their eyes were large and luminous, their movements graceful despite the tense situation. One of them, clearly the leader, stepped forward. She wore a form-fitting silver uniform adorned with intricate insignia, and her hair was a shocking electric blue, cascading in waves past her shoulders. "Greetings, humans of Earth," she said, her voice carrying a slight musical lilt. "I am Captain Zara of the Venusian vessel Nebula Seeker. We've come in response to a galactic distress signal emanating from your planet." John found himself pushing to the front of the bewildered crowd. "Distress signal? What's happening? Why have all the men turned into plants?" Zara's gaze locked onto John, her eyes widening slightly. "You're male. How is this possible?" "Of course I'm male," John exclaimed. "I'm the only one left apparently. Can you explain what's going on?" Zara conferred briefly with her team, speaking in rapid musical tones. She turned back to John, her expression grave. "It appears your planet has fallen victim to a rare cosmic phenomenon we call the chlorophyll cascade. It's a virus of unknown origin that targets beings with Y chromosomes, rewriting their genetic code to match that of plant species." Murmurs of disbelief and horror rippled through the crowd. John felt dizzy, struggling to process the information. "But why am I unaffected?" he asked. Zara replied, "That is what we intend to find out. You may hold the key to reversing this catastrophe. Will you come with us? Your unique immunity could be crucial in developing a cure." John hesitated. Leaving Earth with aliens sounded insane, but what choice did he have? If there was any chance of saving humanity and bringing back all the men who had been transformed, he had to try. "I'll go," he said firmly. "But I need assurances. How do I know I can trust you?" Zara's expression softened. "I understand your hesitation. We are bound by the Galactic Code of Ethics. No harm will come to you. You have my word as captain." One of Zara's crew members, a petite woman with swirling bioluminescent markings on her skin, stepped forward. "Captain, preliminary scans show this human's genetic structure is indeed unique. The chlorophyll cascade virus appears to be present in his system, but dormant." Zara nodded. "All the more reason to begin our research immediately. Time is of the essence." She turned back to John. "What is your name?" "John Shen." "Very well, John Shen. Will you accompany us to Venus? Our medical facilities there are far more advanced than anything on Earth. It may be our best chance at finding a cure." John took a deep breath, acutely aware of the eyes of every surviving human in the vicinity trained on him. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. "All right," he said, "but I need to know everything about this virus, about your people, about what we're up against." Zara inclined her head. "Of course. We'll brief you once we're aboard. Time is critical. We don't know how long the plants will remain viable hosts for human consciousness." As they made their way towards the ship, a woman from the crowd rushed forward, grabbing John's arm. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "My husband, my son, you have to bring them back." John gently placed his hand over hers. I'll do everything I can, he promised. I won't give up until we find a way to reverse this. The ramp closed behind them as they entered the ship. John's last glimpse of Earth was a sea of frightened faces and a landscape dotted with inexplicable greenery. Inside the ship, advanced technology surrounded him. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing real-time data on Earth's condition. John tried not to gawk, but the sights were overwhelming. This way to the medical bay, Zara instructed. We'll need to run a full battery of tests to understand your immunity. As they walked, John's mind raced with questions. So, Venus 9. I'm guessing that's not actually Venus. Zara smiled, a hint of amusement in her eyes. No, it's a terraformed moon in a nearby star system. We chose the name as a nod to your mythology. Our ancestors visited Earth long ago, inspiring some of your legends. They entered a room that looked like a cross between a laboratory and a medical clinic from the far future. A team of Venusian scientists awaited them, their expressions a mix of excitement and concern. Lady Zara announced, "This is John Shen, potentially our best hope for understanding and reversing the chlorophyll cascade. John, this is Dr. Lyra, our chief xenobiologist." Dr. Lyra, a Venusian with striking silver eyes, stepped forward, offering a small bow. It's an honor, John Shen. Your genetic resistance could be the key to saving countless lives across the galaxy. John's eyebrows shot up. Across the galaxy? You mean this virus isn't limited to Earth? Dr. Lyra shook her head. I'm afraid not. We've detected outbreaks on several worlds. Earth is simply the most advanced case we've encountered. If we can't find a cure... She trailed off, the implication hanging heavily in the air. Right, John said, squaring his shoulders. Where do we start? The next few hours were a whirlwind of tests, scans, and sample collections. John tried to focus on the rapid-fire explanations of Venusian technology and biology, but his mind kept drifting back to Earth and the chaos he had left behind. Finally, Dr. Lyra called for a break. We've gathered enough initial data. You must be exhausted, John. Perhaps some rest before we continue. John shook his head. No time. Every minute we waste is another minute those people are trapped as plants. What have you found so far? Dr. Lyra exchanged a glance with Zara before pulling up a holographic display. Your cellular structure is fascinating. There's a protein in your blood that seems to neutralize the virus, preventing it from activating. If we can isolate and synthesize it. A tremor ran through the ship, cutting her off. Alarms blared, and Zara's communication device crackled. Captain, we're under attack. What? Zara snapped. By whom? Unknown vessels, came the reply. They seemed to be after John Shen's blood. John's blood ran cold. Had he just made himself a target by leaving Earth to find a cure? Zara's expression hardened. Battle stations. Prepare for emergency jump to Venus 9. We cannot let them capture John Shen. The Nebula Seeker lurched violently as it emerged from hyperspace, nearly throwing John off his feet. He gripped the edge of a nearby console, his knuckles white. The ship's alarms continued to blare, but the immediate threat of their pursuers seemed to have passed. Status reports. Zara barked, her composure barely masking her tension. A holographic display flickered to life, showing their current position relative to Venus 9. They had arrived safely in orbit around the terraformed moon. We've lost them, Captain, one of the crew members reported. No sign of pursuit. Zara's shoulders relaxed marginally. Initiate landing sequence and get me a secure channel to the High Council. They need to be briefed on the situation immediately. As the ship began its descent, John stared out the view screen, taking in his first glimpse of an alien world. Venus 9 was a marvel of engineering, its surface dotted with gleaming domed cities and lush, artificial forests. It's beautiful, John murmured. Dr. Lyra appeared at his side. Wait until you see it up close, she said, a hint of pride in her voice. Our ancestors spent centuries perfecting the terraforming process. The ship touched down on a landing pad near the largest of the domed cities. As the ramp lowered and John stepped onto the surface of Venus 9, he felt a mixture of awe and determination. The fate of Earth and countless other worlds rested on his shoulders. The Venusian briefing. As John stepped out of the Nebula Seeker, the atmosphere of Venus 9 enveloped him, a blend of vibrant colors and strange, synthetic scents. The landing pad was bustling with activity. Venusian scientists and officials moved purposefully, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. John marveled at the city's futuristic architecture, gleaming domes and floating walkways connected by shimmering beams of light. Dr. Lyra guided him through a series of corridors and into a large, high-tech chamber. The walls were lined with holographic screens displaying various data streams and planetary maps. At the center of the room stood a large table surrounded by Venusian officials, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Captain Zara took her place at the head of the table, her silver uniform catching the light. Ladies and gentlemen of the High Council, I present John Shen, the human whose unique genetic structure may be the key to reversing the chlorophyll cascade. A tall Venusian with a regal bearing stepped forward. I am Chancellor Theron. We are grateful for your cooperation, John Shen. We must act quickly. The chlorophyll cascade is a grave threat, not just to Earth, but to other worlds as well. John nodded, trying to absorb the gravity of the situation. What exactly is the chlorophyll cascade? How does it affect other planets? Chancellor Theron activated a holographic display showing a galaxy map with several red markers indicating outbreaks. The chlorophyll cascade is a highly adaptable virus. It targets species with Y chromosomes, rewriting their genetic code to mimic plant life. We've detected outbreaks on multiple planets, but Earth is the most advanced case. Dr. Lyra chimed in. Your blood contains a unique protein that seems to neutralize the virus. We need to isolate and replicate this protein to create a universal antidote. John felt a pang of responsibility. What can I do to help? Zara's expression softened. We need to conduct more tests to understand how your immunity works and how we can use it to synthesize a cure. The meeting concluded with a plan to expedite the research. John was shown to a comfortable quarters within the research complex, designed to help him adjust to the alien environment. As he settled in, he couldn't shake the feeling of urgency. Every minute spent in this alien world was a minute lost for Earth. The research begins. The next morning, John was escorted to the research lab, a sprawling facility filled with advanced technology. Venusian scientists buzzed around, working with an array of futuristic equipment. Holographic interfaces and floating data screens filled the room with a constant flow of information. Dr. Lyra and her team were waiting for him. Today, we'll start by conducting a series of detailed tests to analyze your genetic structure and the protein in your blood, she explained. John sat in a high-tech chair, and the examination began. Various instruments scanned and analyzed his blood, his DNA, and other biological samples. The process was strange but non-invasive, and John tried to stay calm despite the overwhelming complexity of the technology around him. As Dr. Lyra reviewed the initial results, her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. The protein in your blood is indeed extraordinary. It seems to interact with the virus in a way we've never seen before. Zara joined them, a serious look on her face. We need to ensure that the protein can be synthesized in sufficient quantities. This requires isolating it from your blood and replicating it in our labs. John glanced at the screens displaying detailed images of his blood cells and the virus. How long will this take? Dr. Lyra replied, We aim to have preliminary results within a few days, but it will depend on how quickly we can replicate the protein and test its efficacy. As the day progressed, John observed the meticulous work of the scientist. Each test, each sample brought them closer to finding a cure. Yet there was still a sense of urgency. Every minute spent on Venus 9 was a minute that Earth's population remained in peril. The first success. Several days passed, and John felt a mix of hope and fatigue. The Venusian scientists had been working tirelessly, and Dr. Lyra's team was making significant progress. The lab was a hive of activity as they prepared to test the synthesized protein against the chlorophyll cascade virus. Dr. Lyra approached John with a small vial of glowing liquid. We've managed to replicate a preliminary batch of the protein. It's time to test its effectiveness. John took a deep breath. What's the plan? We'll test the protein on a sample of the virus in controlled conditions, Dr. Lyra explained. If it neutralizes the virus as expected, we can proceed with larger-scale tests and begin preparations for distribution. The tension in the lab was palpable as the team conducted the experiment. The results were displayed on a series of holographic screens, and John watched with bated breath. After what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Lyra looked up with a relieved smile. The protein has neutralized the virus in the sample. This is a major breakthrough. Cheers erupted in the lab, and John felt a surge of hope. They had taken a significant step forward, but the work was far from over. The synthesized protein needed to be tested further and scaled up for mass production. Unseen threats. Despite the breakthrough, the atmosphere on Venus 9 remained tense. John couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The alien world was full of wonder, but the threat of the chlorophyll cascade loomed large. Zara's communication device crackled with an urgent message. "Captain, we've detected unknown vessels approaching the moon. They appear to be the same ones that attacked us before." Zara's face hardened. "Prepare for possible combat. We cannot let them interfere with our research." John's heart pounded. The attackers were after his blood, and now they were closing in on Venus 9. The team quickly secured the lab, and the scientists continued their work under heightened security. The Nebula Seeker's defense systems were activated, and the ship's crew prepared for the worst. John watched as the ship's weapons were readied, and the security protocols were reinforced. As the unknown vessels approached, a tense silence fell over the research complex. The future of Earth, and potentially other worlds, was hanging in the balance. The final push. The unknown vessels hovered ominously in the space around Venus 9, and the situation grew increasingly dire. Zara and her team worked tirelessly to maintain the defense systems and keep the research operations running smoothly. Dr. Lyra and her team continued their efforts to scale up the production of the synthesized protein. "We're making good progress," she said, "but we need more time to ensure the formula is stable for mass distribution." John understood the gravity of the situation. Every moment was critical, and the threat of attack loomed large. He worked alongside the scientists, offering support wherever he could, driven by the knowledge that the fate of Earth, and countless lives, depended on their success. As the final batch of the protein was prepared for distribution, the security systems detected increased activity from the approaching vessels. Zara's face was a mask of determination. "We need to be ready for any contingency. Prepare for immediate evacuation if necessary." The team worked around the clock, and finally, the synthesized protein was ready. It was stored in secure containers and prepared for transport back to Earth. With the research complete and the protein ready, John and the Venusian team braced themselves for the impending conflict. The unknown vessels were closing in, and the battle for survival was far from over. The evacuation. The Nebula Seeker's alarms blared as the unknown vessels closed in on Venus 9. Zara gave the order for evacuation, and the team prepared for an emergency departure. John and the Venusian scientists hurried to the ship, carrying the crucial cargo of synthesized protein. The atmosphere on the landing pad was tense, with security personnel working to protect the area from potential attack. As they boarded the ship, John glanced back at the research complex. It had been a whirlwind of activity, but the team had managed to produce the necessary antidote. The next step was to get the protein back to Earth and start the process of saving humanity. The Nebula Seeker lifted off, its engines roaring to life as it ascended into space. The ship's defensive systems were activated, and the crew prepared for the possibility of an attack. John's thoughts were focused on Earth. The synthesized protein needed to be administered quickly to reverse the chlorophyll cascade. As the ship made its way back to Earth, John hoped that their efforts would be enough to turn the tide. The journey was tense, but the crew remained vigilant. The ship navigated through the stars, carrying the key to humanity's survival. A futuristic sci-fi scene featuring a muscular human male standing confidently between two alien females. The man is shirtless, showcasing a strong physique, and is wearing high-tech accessories. The alien females have sharp, elf-like ears and are dressed in sleek, futuristic outfits, one in silver and the other in blue. They are holding chains that appear to restrain the man. In the background, a technologically advanced cityscape with UFOs hovering above and a distant planet or moon can be seen in the sky. The mood should convey tension and determination as the man prepares to demonstrate the power of human weaponry after being mocked by the alien.